Welcome to Awakening Warriors. We talk about life, love, lessons, and learning. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Don't we?
I don't know. We'll see.
We have different viewpoints on the topic, so. But anyways, recap of our week real quick. Everything's fallen into place for the most part. Theoretically, I'll be leaving on Thursday. And closing on the house out there in South Dakota on Friday. And what else? Sold your car. And that was a whole fiasco, which, maybe we can get into later, but it turned out very well and everybody was happy. So, and today we're going to talk about how trauma breeds growth. What are your thoughts, dear?
My hang up with that is trauma provides an opportunity to grow, sure.
I agree with that.
But to say that it just straight up does is not true, because we know people in our own lives who have experienced trauma and don't grow from it.
Everybody experiences trauma to some degree, obviously. Like, there's no one that that can go through their life and be like, I don't have any trauma.
I agree.
So, but if we really think about it, for me personally, like, without trauma, there is no growth. You can't grow without some sort of trauma.
It doesn't have to be trauma.
How are you going to grow then?
We sit and read a book, and we choose to embody different things. Tell me where the trauma, comes in there. I agree that, adversity and challenges and trauma can be part of that, can be used to grow, but just to say that, if trauma were non-existent, no human would ever grow, I don't think is true.
I agree. I think we would just grow at a slower pace.
And that's what I mean. I think
because, for instance, I think about the gym. If you don't go to the gym, you don't fuck up your muscles, there's no growth. You have to have that trauma. You're traumatizing your muscles when you go to the gym. That's the point. You're breaking them down.
Yeah,
you're fucking them up. Yeah, and then basically your body's like, okay, cool. Now we're gonna rebuild and make them stronger. So even as a kid or as a normal adult, but specifically thinking from childhood through adulthood, that's typically where your growth comes from, is specifically trauma. So even without a growth or reading a book is deliberate growth, that's intentional, But typically, even if in order to move through something, you have the trauma and then you have to move it through it. Otherwise, you're going to just hang onto it, and you're not going to be able to advance in life,
Right. And that's where I feel that it doesn't automatically equal growth, because again, there are people who will just sit in that and don't flow through it or move through it, and don't learn lessons along the way, and just choose to whether it's conscious or unconscious, to just sit in the misery and the shit of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my childhood is a perfect example of this specific example. My sister and me, she's still dealing with a bunch of bullshit and everything else as far as the family and all that stuff. We lived same parents, everything else. We have very similar traumas. She has slightly different due to the abandonment concept of her biological father or whatever,
Which I was gonna say too, because you had the same parents who raised you, but she's got a different biological dad, which I believe in nurture a lot more than I believe in nature, but to say that your genes or your DNA doesn't play any part in anything. So it's just interesting.
Oh,
I'm not gonna say it's all on that. It's just an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, for sure. But just to using this as an example, and I'm not I'm not bashing her or whatever, but I'm just making a clear point that our life is our childhood was a very good example of this, because I saw the trauma and I was very resistant to it, and like I wanted to essentially conquer. Like it just made me want more and wanted to, conquer more versus like she shut down and then she like basically shriveled up and she's still sitting in that trauma, whereas I was like, okay, how do I process this, how do I you know basically not have to be here anymore, and able to move forward. So another example of this is the to a degree, right? The egg and the potato, same circumstances in the boiling water, but an egg gets hard and the fucking potato gets soft. So it's kind of like it's not really your circumstances, it's what you're made of. But I think if people actually, because this is my mindset personally, if more people were like, oh fuck yeah, looked at it as like a challenge, like they could move through their trauma much faster, and like because it's inevitable, you're gonna have it. It's not even a fucking if you have it, it's basically when and what you have, and then that way so we just accept that at that point, like we're all fucked up, and they're like, okay, cool. Well, now this is an opportunity that can breed, growth.
Yeah, and it takes like a conscious awareness of that, because when you don't have that awareness, like being able to take it like anything with like triggers or whatever, like they are, and trauma too, like that is an opportunity for growth. Like when we get triggered, like as humans, that is an opportunity for us to like grow in some way, shape, or form, because here's this thing like clearly you need to work on. And so like going through like traumatic situations, there's always lessons to be learned. There's always like nuggets and embodiment that like can come from those things. And I wanted to point out this part though too, because I think that's your like type A, that's like move through it faster, move through it most effectively, move through it like whatever. And I get where you're coming from, because like who wants to feel not great for long periods of time? But I'm also like, I also have the thought that, I don't know, faster is not always the goal. Like there are things that we don't know anybody's journey or path, or like what they're supposed, well, they're not supposed to, but like what they are to like learn in a traumatic situation. And it might take you longer than it would take me, which probably wouldn't be the case, but
it all depends on the certain circumstances, obviously. For me, moving through the traumatic experience or whatever it is that you're holding on to, or the damage that was done to your mind or whatever, it's better to move faster through it, so then you can get to the next stage. But that's not to say that like for me, like patience has been a challenge throughout my life, like so that's, I'm not gonna, even though I want to move through it fast, it's not something like I am built to at this point in my life to move through fast. Whereas you might already naturally have patience, and you're a slower paced individual, so then you're like, it's not a big deal for you to like learn patience. So even though you so you might move through that faster than I can, but you always want to move through the trauma as fast as you can in order to just move the fuck on. Not to mention the advantage of it, now I have conquered this personal trauma, and now I can teach others to, basically learn how to deal with those traumas. Because let's say you come, people make a lot of excuses, is my fucking problem. It's like, oh yeah, I'm fucking 40 years old and I'm still upset about this because my mom did that, or my dad did this, or my fucking ex-husband, you know what I mean? It's like, move the fuck on, you're 40 years old. Like, it's okay to just move on. I think people make just too many excuses, personally.
I also sound like a pull a David thing in here though, and like there is no fast, there is no slow, like there just is.
Yeah,
and I
should agree.
Understand you, so I know why like fastest is better. Faster is better. Like, I get that, but
I'd rather be a millionaire at 30 than a millionaire at 60.
Like, that's fine that you'd rather be.
Well, the only thing that's holding me back is me. Like, the only reason people, specifically aren't working through, what's something that I can't think of any traumas, but I've got a ton of them. What are my traumas that I can fucking work through, or I have worked through? Maybe the fighting. Like in the beginning, like how we were always fucking fighting and I was always ready to fight. That was a trauma. And like, I felt like I worked through that relatively quick. For the most part, within like a few years, once I was aware.
That wasn't. I wouldn't say that was a trauma. That was
a
after effect of trauma
yeah. That was
had as a child.
That was what do they call that? Aftermath, but they call that a symptom. As a symptom of the trauma, essentially.
Yeah, or byproduct, I think is what I was thinking.
Yeah, but I would say symptom, but like
or like Kojak getting hit, like that was pretty traumatic for me for a minute, because like watching, like I didn't actually see the impact, but like I saw him like scoot down the road like after getting hit by this car, and like that was like holy crap. And then obviously like he passed away, so there's just like a lot wrapped up into that. But like again, for me, like there were times in my, even after the fact, where I could like put myself back in that situation and like get the feelings again and start like tears to my eyes, and like so like that was traumatic for me at that point, who I was like.
For sure. I mean, it was traumatic to me to a degree too, but it wasn't probably, I'm not near as sensitive.
And it's interesting because even now I'm like a little bit hyper vigilant about stuff. Like when Coda got out that one time, I like tackled him and like messed up my whole face because I like was just like instant like panic because like last time something like this happened,
PTSD.
This is what that was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because you kind of had like a, like, what if?
Yeah.
Well,
it like almost like brought me back to that, like that's gonna happen, so like I need to like.
Yeah. The Jim Rohn quote, basically you're not gonna, he's like, everything's risky, investing is risky. He's like, if you don't invest, wait till you get the bill, or if you don't invest, wait till you get the bill for not investing. He's like, you're not gonna have anything. He's like, investing is risky, getting married is risky, having kids is risky. He's like, let me tell you how risky it is. You're not gonna make it out alive. Like,
I love how you do his voice like he does.
Yeah. Well, he's a fucking legend, dude. Jim Rohn is a fucking legend. Him, Les Brown, those are probably my top two. So, but, yeah. I actually like am starting to like the trauma. Like I'm like, oh fuck yeah. Like, for instance, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast. I feel like I did, but I was like, like maybe when Taz, we came back, and I was like, maybe I should just fucking take him in the back and shoot him. I'm like, that maybe that's what I should be doing, because I don't want him to fucking sit here and suffer. And then Jessica was like, well, don't do that. If that's the decision you're gonna make, I'll call my dad, and my dad can come out and do it. Which he would have done. He's a pretty hard ass. And I'm like, I don't know. Like in that moment, I was even thinking, I'm like, I'd rather do it. I'm like, that's a traumatic experience. I'm like, I could fucking grow from that.
It's so interesting for me to like think about that, because that's like a very like, primal was the word I was thinking, but just very like a hard situation. Like if that would have come to it like that, and you're like, I'll do that because I'm gonna grow from it. But then when there's like other little inconveniences of like, our house might not be closing on the exact day that I thought it was gonna be, you're like,
fucking stupid shit.
Yeah, so like you'd rather, I don't know, like, because even for me, like that I would not say that the trauma, that was more of just like you and your personality and like whatever. But like even that I see as like, this is an opportunity to like grow. Yeah, well yeah, but they're fucking dumb, blah blah blah. Like, oh okay. But like then you'd like say that you'd go shoot your dog, but like you hear there might be pushing back closing by a week, and you're like,
I'm not. I'm just doing
you
everything
I
can
do. You were in that moment, and granted, you even said like that you just needed to like complain or whatever. Like it'll all be fine. It'll all work how it's supposed to.
Well, yeah. Whether I do it a week later or not, right? Like it's not gonna be that fucking detrimental to my life. I'm just fucking annoyed. Like I've got this plan. Let's fucking run with it. Like this is the date we set. Let's fucking stick to it. Otherwise, why do we even make the fucking date? There's no point. Let's just fucking willy-nilly make whatever. Like fuck it. Either make the date or fuck off. So I'm doing everything in my personal power to make sure that we're closing on that specific date. Otherwise, again, don't make the fucking date.
I just felt some big energy from that.
Good. You like that?
No, we were already a little triggered again just talking about you being triggered. Anyway, trauma. Yeah, I think, especially like doing the work that I do, like I know that there's so much, like the ability to move through things, especially when it comes to traumatic situations, like is so possible and healthy. Because like you said, like there's not going to be a human that has never experienced anything traumatic. Like that's just part of the human experience. And so like being able to flow through those things and learn as you go and grow, like grow through what you go through, like is possible, and it's a better choice than not, than just sitting in it. And
yeah, and this is a shit we should be taught in schools. Like, to be honest, like, not fucking some bullshit history class or fucking geometry. You know, like some of these things are important. Like geometry to a carpenter, or history means nothing because basically, well,
a lot of it was made up anyway.
Yeah, a lot of it's made up anyway. So but to a degree, there is some value in that, right? So, because we can look at history and be like, oh, wow, that's how Hitler rose. Let's fucking make sure, and we can see the patterns because history repeats itself, and, like, all these things. So, but, like, all of this stuff is what we should be, like, fucking, we should have a class in this. Like, oh, yeah, fucking bring in a psychologist or a coach or, something like that, and, like, they just teach the class. That's their class. They teach about trauma and how to work through it and whatever else. And
yeah, and it's crazy because I think a lot of the way that America, I would say, like, tends to be very reactive. So like, oh, now you've experienced this traumatic thing. Okay, now go to counseling and learn how to cope. Like, learn what your coping skills are. Learn how to relaxation and what that means for you and how you can So like we wait to teach these things to kids or teens or even adults until after something's already happened. We're like, if you could, which we talked a little bit about this, like if we decide to have kids, like being able to teach that just right off the bat, and then when things happen, they know how to flow through that because they already have skills to be able to do that, rather than this really terrible thing just happened, now let's teach you how to go through it. Where
imagine teaching a fucking Kenton or a Kensley the silent observer. What the fuck? That would be game changing. My kid would probably be smarter than me by the age of probably 12 or 15 or whatever, and better in the skills because that's what they naturally do. Whereas I'm trying to backtrack my shit,
right.
And
unlearn and then relearning.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause up until fucking 2 years ago, I didn't even know about the silent observer. I'm 26 years old and I'm now just learning this. I'm probably halfway through my fucking life, or a third at least.
Yeah.
I didn't learn learn that skill in a third of my life until I was through a third of my life. That's fucking ridiculous. But if I can take that and fucking apply it to a kid, they can work through their trauma so much faster. So, and they'd probably seek for trauma. They'd be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go fucking find some trauma, and then I'm gonna, Aubrey Marcus talking about the polyamorous whatever thing. That was a traumatic experience. I'm like, listening to him talk about it, and she was, with a UFC fighter or whatever, and then he's like, I gotta become the best UFC fighter. He's like, and then at this point, he's reflecting, he's like, I'm not gonna be a better UFC, he is a UFC fighter, that's what he does, I do this, so, I just need to be the best me versus, because he's essentially overcompensating, in order to yeah. I'm like, dude, that's some fucking trauma shit too. You would deal with. Is Coda inside or outside?
I think he's in here.
Gotcha. It's fucking raining.
That made me think though, seeking out the trauma, which I would not characterize our ultra marathons as trauma, but in a weird way, it probably kind of was. Literally traumatic for our bodies because after the fact,
why I do
it. What the hell?
It's traumatic just in the fucking mindset of it. Just when you're halfway through 25 miles or or even the last fucking 10 miles of it, bro, I'm fucked up. me specifically, I can't speak for your side of things, but like, yeah, I literally do those things in order because I know it's gonna make me a better man. You know, I know it's gonna make me tougher. There's a reason why nobody does those things because they're fucking pussies. I literally seek out discomfort and seek out opportunity to grow, and that's the problem. Like, you know, most of society tries to avoid discomfort and avoids those opportunities. Where I'm like, fuck, I can do this, and I can, on the other side, even though there's going to be a lot of struggle and everything else, I'm like, on the other side, who will I be? You know, I'm like, fuck. The fact that I've done 3 now, like, the first one I was like, fuck. And then the second one, I was like, well, I have to do it because I didn't officially, I got a DNF, which I shouldn't have in my personal opinion, but whatever. And I should have like rebutted that and like went after him and be like, yo, I fucking completed it.
I think what came down to it was they had closing times for aid stations. So if you technically didn't make it there by the time that aid station closed.
I was already past the last aid station, motherfucker. That's when I
Whoa!
That's
triggered.
That's where I put in my thing, remember?
Good grief.
We're at the fucking road on that last stretch.
Breathe. It's alright.
I'm ready to go.
I see this.
I'm just having fun.
Yeah, you're irritated because I didn't remember that you had made it through all that.
I'm not irritated.
That's why you called me MFer.
I'm not irritated.
Okay.
Anyways. So, yeah, like, like I said, I can't speak for you, so go ahead.
I want to punch you in the head right now. Yeah, so for me, I have multiple different reasons. So some of it is external motivation. I don't know if I'd even call it motivation, but I almost feel the need to do these things because you're doing these things, and like, what does that mean for like our relationship and for me if you're out doing these hard things and I'm just like not ever pushing myself. But it also, for a really big part of it, is like to prove to myself that I can do hard things, because I, even just thinking right now, like, because that feeling like leaves, like you almost forget, like, and you probably don't because your confidence is just way higher, but like for me, I like almost forget how awesome I am. So it made me think about when we were trying to get that thing down in the garage, and like I just thought about that, and I was like, dude, like I ran the 50 twice, like, and I was like freaking out about bringing this thing down because I was all just like worried. I was traumatized because your finger was caught in it that one time, and like,
yeah, and I was.
And so now, like looking back on that moment, like I was panicky. I was like trying to like have it all figured out before I did it because didn't want anybody to get hurt, and I wanted blah 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 whatever. And then I'm like, dude, like just now I was like, oh my god, I did that like a couple very hard things, but like I couldn't even, because like that feeling of like I can do these things, I have proved it to myself, had already like dissipated.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of like Goggins talks about the cookie jar, reaching into the cookie jar. Like, when I was doing my 50 or whatever, I was reaching in the cookie jar, and I'm like, dude, I already did the fucking 50 once without any, training or logic or anything, and no strategy at all, and I fucked myself, and I still completed it. And then I did the 100, which is twice as long as this. I'm like, bro, you should easily, this is the most recent 50, obviously. And I was like, dude, I can easily be able to do this. But I was like, fuck, man, like, I just tanked. So
yeah,
like,
that is such a good analogy, because the same, like, I was like, dude, I've done this before. Like, because, like, when I want to quit, and I'm like, I'm not quitting now because I've done this before. I've already completed it. So, like, if I didn't do that now, like, I have the ability to. I know I do.
Yeah, unless you have, like, maybe you have a fucking, like, a fucked up ankle or whatever else that, like, you
like
slapped
severe injury.
Yeah, severe injury. Like, that would be a reason not to do.
I didn't have. Like, I was just hurting.
Yeah, that would be a reason, in my opinion, to not complete it if you had some sort of or whoever, like, was doing something hard and they had a severe injury. Okay, I'm like, yeah, that would make sense. Like, don't fucking damage it. Like, especially if there's nothing riding on it. Like, there's no reason to do it besides to be your own, egotistical reasons. So, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just enjoy challenging myself, and the easiest way to challenge yourself is always like physically, because like, you can just pick something and go out and fucking do it. Whereas like, if I'm trying to do patience or grow my patience, like, you can
I can help you.
You can do those things, but it's not the same. Like, it doesn't change your mental toughness. And then also, like, once you do those things, yes, it boosts up your confidence and whatever else because you're like, dude, I did this, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and your your body is like you literally have that, you know. So like if you do fast or if you do something push-up challenge every like whatever, like you don't have to. That's more of like a force because like I'm gonna make myself do this thing, or like the patient situation would have to be like organic, like things would just have to like come up or.
To a degree, you could probably seek something that would like.
That's why you married me.
Shush your patience.
So that I can help you with your patients.
Hunting maybe, like you know, like you can go out in the thing and you know seek opportunities. Like that would be a great thing, you know. But yeah. So that's my my philosophy on life. Trauma breeds growth. If you do it right.
Provides an opportunity.
If you do it right. That's the if you do it right part. If you do it right, trauma breeds growth. Say it with me. Trauma breeds growth. Say it. 1, 2, 3. Trauma breeds growth. Whatever.
No, because that statement in and of itself is not true.
If you do it right. So I added that. If you do it right, okay, let's do it all together. If you do it right, trauma breeds growth.
Right.
Okay, ready?
No, what does it matter if I say it or not?
You heard her say I was fucking right.
Yeah, so good enough. Moving on.
Eventually I want to talk about raising children too.
Which we've never done.
Yeah. No, have we?
We've never raised a child.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, but I was a child, so I'm fucking. I feel like.
And we did have Xander, which we weren't necessarily raising him, but we parented for a little bit there.
Yeah, I've got like, I know what works and what doesn't work for sure, and you know, obviously there's going to be a lot of learning opportunity in that, and we're not going to get into this, but I'm based. You know, I just want to like, maybe that's what we'll do next week if we don't have. Oh fuck.
Figure that out.
Let's figure out, yeah.
That's the same thing.
But like having children, I think people just like have children, and then they're just like, they're just here, you know, and then they just kind of like go by the wayside, you know, and they're just kind of like whatever. But you're literally the purpose of having children, like as the parent, is to fucking train them for life, you know. So it's just like. You know, you're supposed to be training them for life. You shouldn't be fucking doing everything for them and all this other jazz. And then we can...
Or not doing anything and just, like, ignoring and neglecting. And
yeah. And we could... Dude, that's a really great topic because you and I have completely radically different childhoods, too. So... And they both caused a lot of different traumas. But I wear my trauma like a badge.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing. See? Like... I wear... you can wear it as a badge. There's nothing... I feel like that's a healthy thing to do, personally. Because you're acknowledging it.
You can acknowledge it without being proud of it. I'm so proud that X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. But you worked through, yeah. Sure. But then that actually happened. You can wear your growth through your trauma like a badge. That's different.
It's the same thing.
No.
Because trauma breeds growth.
Words are important to me, in case y'all haven't realized, and you know that, like...
I lost my train of thought.
Good. Moving on. That's, like, next topic anyway, so...
What?
Where you were talking about, what you were just talking about. That's enough.
Alright, well... Oh, a quickie.
We can say catch us on Instagram and Facebook, but I didn't even post anything last week when our episode went live, so...
Yeah, they can still follow us. Go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and...
Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and you thought this was entertaining or, you know, kind of interesting or could help somebody, share it. So, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.